Hi, my name is Margaret Motheral, and I'm here to talk about environmental justice, what a brownfield is, and the problems of environmental toxicity in Philadelphia, and how to look at it, understand it, and improve it. For decades, there's been studies to show that lead and other toxic chemicals increase crime and violent behavior and learning problems. And this city is one of the top cities in lead levels in the soil and so forth. I just came from a EPA Brownfield and Environmental Justice Conference and learned a lot more about this. The reason I got into it was because it personally affected my life, and it's affecting all of us. So what is a brownfield? A brownfield is a site that's contaminated or suspected to be contaminated because of a history of most likely industrial sites, gasoline stations, railroad yards, dry cleaners, meth labs, all kinds of things can be full of chemicals. And this is an old industrial city. Pittsburgh, a lot of cities have this problem, and we need to look at it because it is affecting us, our population as a whole. My personal experience was I was pretty new to Philadelphia. I came from California in 1999, and for 5 years I was in school and not really paying too much attention to the city. And then I bought my first house, and it was an end row. And it was next to a vacant lot, and across from that lot was a railroad. And the train went up to New York. There's a train stop right there, and I thought that was great. I can just walk out my house and get on the train. And I was told that they were going to build, and okay, that's fine. And my brother is in construction, and I just figured people do things right. And so then I saw the plans. Finally, the plans for the project came through, and I was really alarmed about just the setup. And I wrote to my councilwoman, and I was ignored. And then I just figured, okay, they're going to build it, And I'd never heard of a brownfield. They started coming in with demolition teams. In those days, we had a neighborhood transformation initiative, and they would train teams of demolition crew and go around the city and knock down, vacant lots and, crumbling buildings. And this lot had old brick structures for old coal bins because it had been a coal yard, and there was a company store and a bunch of stuff that needed to be knocked down. The first problem that came to my attention was that my house was jumping like an earthquake and cracking. So in my mind I thought, well, we got to tell them this, and they'll just do something about it. They don't want to wreck my house. I was gone on the day of the zoning meeting, and to tie this into today, the city has been revamping the zoning code, and hopefully they'll take some of what happened to me into consideration when they go through their process of developing land and communicating with the neighbors about what they're building and what it's going to mean to them. I sent an attorney to the zoning meeting, and it turned out that the project was promoted by politicians, okay? And that is another issue that Philadelphia really has to look at, is the involvement of political officials in zoning and development. There's this one judge here, Judge Albert Shepard, and he criticized this practice of politicians getting involved with zoning matters, saying there's no legal basis for this practice. This court believes that it constitutes fertile ground for seeds of mischief and should be officially abandoned. So here I was, like totally naive about Philadelphia politics, and they didn't care my house was cracked. And when I got home from, but that was just the first of my problems. When I got home from my trip to Greece, they had started to dig up the land. And there was a lot of dust in the air from the demolition, like brick dust and so forth, which is quite dangerous to your lungs, the dust particulates. And there's a lot of heavy metals and lead in bricks. So they're digging up all this dust, and my house is like 4 feet away and surrounded. And I start coughing and getting sick, and then the chemicals start coming up, and I can't think, and I'm getting really loopy, and I'm saying there's something wrong with the soil. Then instead of responding to that, the ward leader went around my neighborhood on election day and told everybody I was crazy. Okay. And so I started doing my own detective work. And a brownfield, for any development, you have to do an environmental phase 1 report. And in that report, you do a history of the site. And part of that is talking to the neighbors. Part of it is like looking at records and find out, well, what happened on that site? What kind of industry was on that site? And you could see the industry. I mean, the brick bins were there, and the sign from the last company that left in the 80s was still there when I moved in. And there was people on my street who had worked on that site and had daily dumped chemicals right in the soil. And one day I ended up going to the emergency room because I couldn't breathe, and the doctor said to leave the site. There was this underground creek which I had found out about, but they had dug up enough that it was like coming out. It was bubbling out. And it was probably the first time since I think maybe 1910 that the creek had seen the light of day. And to me, it's a shame, there was this creek. It's one of the headwater areas of the Weehawken, that the city didn't do this investigation on the site, and maybe opened up the creek and made a green space. As it was, the water department, I had written to the city about going to the hospital, and the water department issued a series of violations. One was to remove contaminated dirt. However, they did not tell any of the neighbors. My doctors were asking for data on what was in the soil, and that was refused by many officials in the city. One of the debates at the EPA conference was, should the public be allowed to know what they were being exposed to? And a lot of the developers don't want that because they might lose some money, okay? But this is our health. And so this is a big issue. Like, are you being exposed to lead? Are you being exposed to mercury? Are you being exposed to the millions of chemicals that we have now? This chemical issue is worldwide now. It's really coming to our attention through the Gulf, through Japan, through, it's a worldwide problem. And disease from these new chemicals is a new field in medicine. Most doctors in Western medicine don't really know how to treat it. So it's like a whole new disease epidemic that we have, that we're being exposed to, is that this load of chemicals that we've created on this planet is getting so high that we're all susceptible. Traditionally, a brownfield is considered something that's in a low-income area. They'll put factories, they'll put landfills in low-income areas, because usually those people, they don't have lawyers to fight it, they're not informed, so they get away with it, and that's been the tradition, and that's what environmental justice is about, is that the same standards of health and law apply and protect anybody, minorities, low income, anybody. I got exposed really fast, and I was like the frog that jumped into the hot water, and I jumped out of the house, and I've not been able to live in my house for years. But usually people live in a toxic neighborhood and they don't know it. There may be more cancers, asthmas, violent crime, lower IQ, fertility issues. They don't know the toxins are there. So it kind of takes a disaster or emergency to bring it to the forefront. Then a lot of people don't want to know about it because their property values are going to go down. It's going to change their life. So they just want to ignore it. In this city, you need to speak up. I mean, this city has so much violence in it, and there's a relationship to the chemical burden. When New York went on a campaign to clean up their neighborhoods, the crime rate went down. And so to me, this is imperative in this city for our children, for our own economic progress, for our health in general. One of the things that the EPA was saying, place is health. Where you are you around enough nature? That's health. When we're healthy, we can make good decisions, we can make money, we can create, we can be inventive. And in my situation, no matter how much evidence came up, no matter how much confession there was, like the attorney for the other developer admitted in front of a judge that there was an environmental problem, it didn't matter, because I was just one woman and they were all politicians, okay? So it didn't matter. And so I'm saying to the people of Philadelphia, don't let that be a wall to your civil rights or what's good for you. Speak up. I know they're not listening, but if enough of you speak up, they're gonna listen. Most of the politicians these days for the last few years, they've been talking green because it gets votes, and that they may not know anything about green, okay? And they may be allowing things like this to happen, but it gets votes, so they're gonna talk about it. But it's really up to the people of the city or the nation or the world to make sure you have a good life. Make sure your kids have a good life. And this chemical problem is deadly, and it needs to be addressed. It's not going away. So if you want your politicians to straighten up, and you want a clean city so that your kids are healthy and they're not shooting each other, learn about environmental justice and learn about brownfields and learn and demand to know what kind of toxic situations are in your neighborhood and in your house.